Hello, everyone. My name is Dwayne Hardin. I'm a 7th and 8th grade teacher at Head Middle Magnet School in downtown Nashville, Tennessee. What I've come to bring to you guys today for a presentation is talking about card sorts. Now, if you're unsure about what a card sort is, card sorts are basically a way that students can use information, manipulate things around using small cards, and be able to review, to look at new information, to be able to see kind of as a stepping stone as to how well students are doing. Being in this day and age and being that there's such a high concern for COVID, a lot of us are still online. And where I'm at in Metro Nashville Public Schools, students had a choice to either step into the classroom in late February or they could stay online for the rest of the year. I was in the group who decided to step into the classroom. So even though I'm in the classroom, card sorts are great. But one of the things that we're really concerned about is constant touch contagion and being able to cough into your hand and you're touching cards, passing them on to another student in another class. There's that constant concern and the ability to wipe things down, be able to clean things up. That's a big problem doing card sorts if you're passing them from one class to the next. So what I've found is I've done some research and looked into a lot of ways of being able to teach methods different ways. And I'm able to find a way to use card sorts online to allow students to still be able to have that manipulation and that movement, but also allowing them to be able to learn in a different way. So what I've brought up is a quick presentation on card sorts talking about manipulatives. And in this case, in some cases, you can even collaborate from afar. So real fast, just three main reasons why using a card sort. If you've not used a card sort before, it's a pretty simple activity that takes a lot of setup at the beginning. But once you do the card sort and it's already set, it's something kids can use over and over and over again. Some card sorts I've had for years using them with my students. So one way of using card sort allows you to have students collaborate with one another, especially online. Sometimes that's a bit of a hard activity to do, but using card sorts tends to make it a little bit easier. My students intended to enjoy card sorts a little bit more. They like that ability to be able to talk to each other in a small setting as opposed to trying to do it in a class-wide setting. They can have a firmer understanding of the material, so it helps to solidify some of those thoughts that they may have had about previous presentations. Also, third way to use card sorts, it's a quick way to review. So you can see how well are students understanding this material, what needs to be retaught, or if they're ready to go, you can move straight onto a quiz or to a test if needed. So what I'm going to use for today, I'm going to use a version of PowerPoint, and using a PowerPoint makes it pretty simple. I'm just going to start a blank presentation here. I'll give it to you guys in 4 easy steps. First step, you're going to create a blank slide. So in my previous window, all I'm doing here, I'm just going to pull this window back, so that way you have as much room as possible. And in this case, I'm going to get rid of the extra parts here, so that way I just have a full blank page. Next thing I'm going to do here, I'm going to zoom this out to 50% or less. So if I go to the bottom right-hand corner here, I can go all the way back to 50%. And notice what's happened. The screen right here has gotten smaller. So what this has done is this allows this gray area to be utilized. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to create a table with a size of my choosing, covering the whole white portion of the background in the center. So in this case, I'm going to go literally to Insert. I'm going to put Table in. And you can make the table whatever size you want. So in this case, I'm going to go a 4x3, which is 12. And at first, it's going to be a little on the small side. You're going to want to take that and pull it all the way to the corner edges, all the way around. And what that's going to do is going to make several large boxes. From there, I can format it. I can make it all one color. I can make them blank. I can make them whatever color I want. In this case, I'm going to give one solid color of fill and make it a lighter color, like a light blue maybe. I go with a grayish blue. That gives me a chance to be able to write in these boxes, and that gives me a chance now to be able to have that box set aside and be different from everything else. It kind of stands out. They need to be large enough to type in. That's huge, and you'll see why shortly. So the next step, we need to add text, information, and pictures. Usually if I have a card sort, for those who've not done them before, I use 3 different types of ideas when I'm doing a card sort. I'll do the vocabulary term for something. I'll then use definitions. And then I'll have a picture to go with it, so that way the students can associate the three items together. You don't have to do it that way. You can do it a multitude of different ways. And the topics are a large variety of different things. I know for 7th grade science, one of the big ones we do card sorts for is cellular organelles. So we pull out all the different organelles and they have all the definitions on one side, and we have pictures to help back it up. So what we'll have to do is we have to do text boxes in this. It's the only way you'll be able to put words in easily. So all you do is go to Insert. You're going to go to Text Box. And now you have a little icon with an upside down cross on it. This is where your text box will be. So literally all you do is just make a text box and you can type inside of it. So I'm going to write mitochondria. Now you can make this whatever size you want. So if I need to make it a little bit bigger, you just highlight it. You can change the text size. You'll make it big enough where the students can see it, but not too big to take up a large portion of the box. Some people like to center theirs. For me, I can't center very easily, but I can do it. I may shrink it down a little bit if I need to. Just go to the double arrow there and kind of pull it in. You're good to go. Now, all my definitions will be going in the center here. You don't have to do it this way, but if you want to do it that way, it's kind of a little bit easier to do. When it comes to definitions, I tend to put mine on the left-hand side. You don't have to. Of course, everybody knows who's graduated any time in high school in the last 40, 50 years, the powerhouse of the cell is the mitochondria. And usually what I'll do, just to let students see and kind of have an idea, I always write definitions on the top, and I'll underline it so I can bold it so that way it's able to be seen a little bit better. I also make it a little bit larger as well, so it kind of stands out for students. I'll create one for the other side. And usually just so everybody knows what they're referring to. Also, we'll put the title in the center of whatever it may be. That way it's clear as to what students are working with, because sometimes some of my students, even though they're with me, sometimes they're not always paying attention. So this kind of makes it a little bit quicker as to what are we studying again? Oh, okay. Now, definitions are the easy part, no problem. You can always pick it up and move it a little bit, kind of center things up so that way it's a little bit easier to see. And upon moving things around, notice what's happened here. It gives you a line so you can see where things are going, so it lines up correctly. Finding a picture sometimes can be a bit of a problem. So what I'm going to do, I can go online. I'm just going to put down photo mitochondria. And I'll probably want to find one that does not have a lot of labeling on it, so it doesn't take up a lot of space and it's a little bit easier to see. So like right here is a basic one. I can copy the image, I go back and I'm going to paste it, and look what's happened. Now what I want to do at this point, of course, I want to pull it over to here, and I'm going to resize it. I want to make it smaller. I want to make it big enough so it still will be seen, but also I don't want to make it too big to take up too much space, because eventually they're going to go into the boxes here. Now when you're doing your definitions of pictures, of course, you want to put them in different spots. So that way it's not seen as, oh, I'll take the first definition here, and I'm going to take the first picture here, and that's my answer. You don't want to do that. So you want to kind of put it somewhere else so that way it's not noticeable. Now, of course, this is the part that takes a while. It takes some time to get all your pictures set up. It takes all your time to get your definitions set up. But you can also save this as a template before you start. By saving it as a template, this basic beginning stage where you have the pictures all, the number of cells all set up and your definition and picture area all set up, you can take the title off and take the extras off, and then you have yourself a real simple template to work from. It makes it kind of easier for you. Next step, once you finish all of this, you'll want to send it to your students in advance. Now, for me, at my school that we work at, we're in Schoology. So we use Schoology. I can use that as a place to drop off a download and make sure I tell my students in advance, hey, for next session, make sure that you download the PowerPoint that's set up. We'll talk more about it upon class time. Or I can do something where we worked in Microsoft Teams when we were online. So in the chat, once I start up the class, I can put it into the chat and students can download it from there. For some reason, when I had to download the first time, some students couldn't download it very easily. It may have been that there was some kind of complication with downloading. Maybe Schoology wasn't working very well that day, but I can always do it in the channel as well. You also can email it to your students. Your students will likely have an email address. You can send it to them that way in advance, so that way it's there. So when my students came in the classroom, for that morning, I had it written on my little small online board, hey, go to this website and download here, or check your email. So it was ready to go first thing. Now, once everything is done, you send it off to your students, you have it ready to go. Next step is have a little fun with it. Students can kind of manipulate everything and move things around. They can play with it a little bit, and it allows for easy movement of those items. And what I've done is I just took the same idea here and I have it all set up, ready for the students to work with. So I'm going to put my text box up here. My title wasn't there. Okay, so what students will be able to do at this point, students can then take information and they can pull it from one side to the other. So let's say I have a student, notice they say, okay, controls the function in the cell. Find the 4 arrows, click on it, and notice what's happened here. You have a text box that's popped up. They can grab and hold on to it, and look what happens. You can move it wherever you want to move it to. So it controls the functions in the cell, that's going to be the nucleus. I can click out of it and notice what's happened here. I've now put the definition inside the box. So over here I have all these organelle photos. Now in this case, I've set it up so there's 1 per box. Now in some of my card sorts, I know like with mitosis, one of the things we do with mitosis, we have everything all set up for it. But at the end, one of the problems is there's not a picture in one of them. I couldn't find a picture that adequately explained it. So what it is, I put a second definition there. So I let the students know, hey, for one term, you're going to have 2 definitions. There will not be a picture there. Sometimes when they're sorting them out by hand, it kind of gets lost in the shuffle. Here, you don't lose that anywhere. It's already set up. You see, okay, there's so many definitions, there's so many photos. They have to match up at the end. You shouldn't have any definitions in photos anywhere. So I'm going to go to here, put my nucleus in here. And let's say for some reason, some kid goes to move something and says, okay, well, I'm going to move this. And they accidentally get to the double arrow. What the double arrow does is it resizes things. So notice what's happened here. So let's say I flattened it. Oops, I didn't mean to flatten it. Mr. Hardin, my picture got messed up. What do I do? You'll have students do this. I teach 7th and 8th grade. It happens. Real simple way of doing it. Now they can't really do it from the home screen where they used to anymore, but there used to be an undo portion in here. It's not there anymore. So instead, control in the letter Z. So hold control, hit Z. It brings it back to its original size. Control Z is an undo feature. So what it does in the program you're running, holding control and hitting Z will take you back 1 step from where you were before. So if you made a goof up, it takes it away. If I hit it again, notice what it did. It took back my last step before that one, which was I moved this over to here. So by moving that step and taking it out of the way, it allows you to take back the mistake that you made or take back the last step you did. And it's good for students to use because if they mess something up, they don't have to freak out because sometimes they get a little skittish and they kind of like, They kind of freak out some. So what they can do is they can just move these at will to wherever they want. So it allows them to be able to say, okay, well, this goes here, this goes here. And this is great for students to use on their own as a quick review. Being that you've sent it to them, guess what? They now permanently have it. If they don't have it, guess what? They also can go back and look for it again. So they can now say, okay, I had this sent to my email. Where is it? And now they're responsible for going back to find it. If they deleted it in the email, well, you got to go back and go find it now because somewhere along the way you had it. Now you don't have it anymore. What happened? It gives them a little more responsibility and it gives them a little more accountability. The accountability piece they really need. As I'm running through these, I'm just kind of pulling them in, moving to where they need to go. And one thing with students that I really like with this, everything's in color. Now, it doesn't have to be, because for some students, color doesn't work very well. But also on state testing, like T and Ready tests, the pictures are never really in color, so it's kind of hard to see and understand. So students have a bit of a hard time with that sometimes. So if you want to get it in black and white, you probably could find some pictures out there, or you can kind of work on the pictures in like a Microsoft Paint program. That will tend to be easier for students to do. I'm sorry, for them to see. But this just kind of allows students to be able to do something a little bit different that maybe if you're in a virtual environment, it's been a little harder for them to do. And being in this virtual environment, we need every possible way of sharing information back and forth and being able to use different ways to be able to teach. That's normally something we would probably do in a classroom that worked really well, but ended up being a bit of a problem maybe in this virtual environment. Because I know for me, a lot of times reviewing with students ended up being a part of a problem. Yeah, I could do something like a quizzes or I could do something along those lines, but in the moment, it was a bit of a problem because I couldn't really have students review very easily right then and there other than just asking them questions. So that was always a bit of a problem for me when I was teaching virtually. And my students didn't really like it either. Because once it was all said and done, for them, it was a bit of a problem trying to see, okay, he's asking us this question, he's going to grab just one or two of us, or maybe do a thumbs up type thing, and that's it. So it's kind of hard really to get that review piece in. So for me, some of the things I do with this, I really enjoy about it. In Microsoft Teams, where we're at, we have breakout rooms. So actually, as I'm working on having them download something or get it ready for beginning a class, I can already start splitting students up into teams. And I can do teams of 2, 3, 4, however many rooms I need, I can set up. And the great thing about Teams is I can bounce from room to room to go see how students are doing. What I would do is I would give them all permission to use the camera or whatever, and one person would assume that responsibility in the classroom. They would pop their screen up, and once they downloaded the PowerPoint, I'd have them zoom out, explain the instructions in advance so they can see it. But then once everything's underway, that one person serves as kind of like the MC of the room. They want to talk with everybody, they want to get the information, but also they're kind of like a Vanna White from Wheel of Fortune, where they would end up moving things around and they would be the one to do kind of like what you just saw me do, where I'm in the room and they said, okay, well, allows material in and out of the cell. That's supposed to be for the cell membrane. Put that there. The person would be like, okay, allows material in and out of the cell membrane. Boom, right there it is. And what picture goes with it? And students would talk. Now with a card sort, you don't want too many kids all working on the same thing in one room. You don't want 5, 6, 7 kids. That's where some of those kids who fly under the radar real quietly, that's where they'll go to kind of just chill and hang out and not really do a whole lot. So you don't want that. So you want smaller numbers, 2, 3, sometimes 4, depending on how tough the material is. But you definitely want to be mindful of how you're putting your groups together. You usually want to have somebody who's fairly knowledgeable of the material, kind of helping out a little bit. But also you want to have some people who kind of are in the middle, who maybe need a little extra assistance, and kind of could get that a little extra push to help kind of get them to that next level. And that's where those people really work well together. When they're done, If you want to have them do it individually, you can have them submit the card sort after a set amount of time. You can also have them do it as homework, but a lot of times what I've noticed, especially in late middle school, they love using the internet to help them find the information as opposed to doing it themselves. We just recently had a big issue where I was using some activities from the website Gizmo from Explore Learning, and those kids ended up having a copy fest. One student downloaded some information off the internet. Basically, it was a PDF version of the answers, and he started passing it around. Well, it's not hard to see after too long that, hey, these answers don't match up, and it's a PDF file, which many school students really don't know how to manipulate a PDF very easily. Now, at the very end, one of the things you also could do, I like to post mine in Schoology every once in a while. So I'll post the answers in Schoology and be like, here you are. And I do it as a discussion post. And I want them to react to what their answers were versus what my answers were. So they can kind of look, and at this point, it's more a little critical thinking of, okay, here's what I did. This part I did really well on. This part I don't understand very well. I got mixed up between the nucleolus and the nuclear membrane and the nucleus. And they can kind of see where their thought process is going and be able to understand, okay, this part I'm really good at. This part needs a little bit of work. And by getting them to think that extra little step, it's been seen in my class that some of those kids knew that, okay, when I'm studying, I don't need to study everything. I already know what a cell wall is. I already know what a cell membrane is. But the nucleus part, I need to work on that. So some of the students really got some good feedback from their discussions because they could see in a discussion post that I posted my answers, student A posts her answers, student B posts his answers. Here comes student C coming in and be like, oh, I had a problem with this. So did student A. Student B kind of did, but not really. They now can talk with one another a little bit extra beyond the classroom to say, okay, hey, I'm studying this part and I'm having a problem. How did you learn it? What are you having problems with? Or student B, I see you had a bit of an issue. Here's what I did to help me out. And that extra collaboration piece outside the classroom is what really makes this big. They end up having an ability to talk to one another beyond the classroom. And if it's beyond the four walls, I'm all for it because a lot of the kids don't talk about the material outside the classroom. They tend not to really put forth that time because they really don't seem to care that much about it for the most part. And it's like, it's science, whoop-de-doo. But for my class, I've done this with mitosis and meiosis. I've done it with the cellular organelles. I have one set up for photosynthesis and cellular respiration that they can see the formulas with and be able to see the parts that go into it. And this can be used for a lot of different things. It doesn't have to be just science related. I presented this for my for a PLC group in my classes for my colleagues in my school. And immediately I started getting some great feedback as to what's going on. And I had a couple teachers email me or call and be like, hey, I'm trying to do this for this. What would I do to kind of tweak it a little bit? And they could give me some of their thoughts, and I would give suggestions based on what I saw. And what I noticed is that the pattern here of definition, vocab term, and photo works really well, but it doesn't have to be the only way to do it. You can do it with just definitions and the actual word itself. You could do pictures and vocab term, especially those who have those who are exceptional education students, or those who are ESL students or ELL students and need that extra just little push. The definition can come later, but them just associating the picture with the word sometimes is big, and they can see those two things. And like I tell my students, by you doing this activity, you're seeing the information, so my visual learners can see things going together. My auditory learners are saying it out loud usually and saying it to themselves as they're working on it. So this goes to here. Okay, the powerhouse of the cells, the mitochondria, it looks like a little bean, and they're talking it out. And usually they're talking it out more than once. So it allows them to be able to really see what's going on in their heads and being able to visualize it, say it. And those who are the kinesthetic people, they're moving things around on their screen. Yeah, it's not the same as picking up little cards and moving them around that are laminated. But again, being in this COVID environment, it's kind of hard to do to wipe down every single little card at the end, especially in some cases where, like in my card sort activity, there would be 36 cards. That's a lot of wiping. It's a lot of unnecessary wiping. It's going to take time out of a classroom where it may take 5, 6, 7 minutes just to clean the cards. That's not even doing the activity, because usually that activity takes some time. I would say depending on the um, timing of the activity, how many words are there, how many pictures, you want to set the activity long enough for them to have that time to talk if they're doing it in groups, or if they're going solo, you want to have that time for questions. A lot of my students don't necessarily want to ask a question in channel out loud. They'll type one up, but some of my students will send me an email. So it does take some time for them to have that conversation of what am I doing? How is this looking right? Is this definition meaning more towards this word or this word? And I can guide them and kind of see where that assistance is. But this is also something just to kind of try out and see what you think. For me, the first time doing it with my students, it was kind of received well. A lot of my students were online. It wasn't always, they weren't always present in the moment. Being on a computer screen, they had all kinds of different screens up, or they'd be playing on something, or they wouldn't be paying attention. But once we started getting used to that pattern, the students started understanding that, okay, this is a great tool. This is something that's going to help me, and I like this. And they kind of got some really good enjoyment out of it. Being put into random rooms always kind of gave them a little sense of excitement of who am I going to work with today? Is my friend going to be joining me, or is he going to be in a different room? And being able to have that conversation, especially online, where they couldn't before, is big. Now that we're back in the classroom, it's a little bit different. I don't use card sorts physically very often. I will use them online from time to time. And the students already have a laptop with them. They're already responsible for that laptop. And when they come in, go to your Schoology page, download this, or open up your email, download it. We're going to talk about it in class, and then we're going to work on it. So they're still going to have that manipulation a little bit, where they're moving the mouse around, click and drag. It's still there, just not as much of a virtual environment as what you would have, say, on a virtual online platform. It's now more everybody's working on the computers, or you can always put them in groups and let them work from one laptop. When I've learned to put my groups into twos or threes, I have smaller numbers overall, but I still have that chance where they can collaborate. The only difference now is they have to be a little further apart. So when I have them collaborate, it's done either with what I call like an extended pair or trio, where they've been pulled apart a little further, but can still talk reasonably close together. Or they can open up their own Teams meeting and run it that way. So they can kind of still have that piece where they're seeing everything and they're talking it out. Now it's just done more of a virtual environment, but also right there in person.